Good morning, you guys. 49% of Americans report that they identify as people pleasers, you guys. And it makes up 56% of women, which that does not shock me, and 42% of men describe themselves as being people pleasers. And this data was taken about March 20th of 2023. And for me, you guys, people pleasing was attributed to trauma, the trauma that I experienced, because for me, I formulated in my mind that if I could create a conducive environment to an environment that was toxic, then the nature of the environment would be less harmful and more pleasing. So over time, that creates an atmosphere, a character of just people pleasing, you guys. And when we think about people pleasing, it is not all bad, right? We know that when people take a pleasure in helping others, that's a good thing. And when we think about others first, and then we look and think of ourselves, you guys, that is not a bad thing. But when it becomes a bad thing is when we do it at the stake, right, of our own feelings, of our own wants, of our own desires and needs. If we're constantly putting ourselves last, if we're doing it in order to please others, right? And if we're harming ourselves in the process, people pleasing can be very harmful. And for me, it was due to a trauma response. You know, sometimes growing up in an environment where it's not, where you don't know what's going to happen, right? You want to create an environment that has minimal harmful situations, and you feel like as a child, especially, that you create those situations. You feel like it's your fault because you don't understand in your mind during that time how to even process this. So you try to eliminate any harm. You try to make sure your room is perfect. You try to make sure that you're saying the right things. You try to be the good child to eliminate harm, right? And that is a trauma response, you guys. And through time as adults, when we don't process it, it becomes really hard to process and channel and turn off that people pleasing because you avoid conflict. And we'll go over that later on, but signs of people pleasing, you find it hard to say no. Me, it was hard for me to say no. And I just literally worked on this year, you guys, where people would ask me for things. They'll ask for my time, they'll ask for money, they'll ask for just a lot from me. And I would overextend myself because I wanted to keep the friendship, or I felt like I needed to do these things to keep certain people in our lives. And you guys, if you feel like you have to do something to keep someone in your life, that's conditional love. So you want love that's unconditional, no matter if you could show up or not in that moment, because sometimes you have to just sit there and show up for yourself, right? So it's so important that you don't have conditional love it's only based on conditions. It's only based on transactions, you guys. That you have an unconditional love to where you can have time to sit back and foster yourself. People aren't angry because you can't overextend yourself, right? Another sign is that you accept projects and unrealistic deadline, right? You take more than you can handle because you don't want to say no. You shift your own plans or schedules to accommodate and please others, right? Allow people to work around your schedule. You have a life too, right? I used to do this, right? You take responsibility for making other people better if they're upset, right? You take on so much. You allow things to slide when people are saying negative things that are hurtful, right? Backhanded compliments. You allow that to slide because this is my friend. This has been going on for years. You want to keep the friendship, right? You have a hard time asking for help because most of the times when people are people pleasers, you're the go-to because they know that they can get something out of you. But you don't normally you are afraid to ask for help, right? You show people warmth even when it's not warranted. That's me. I used to constantly be like, say things or just be warm to others because I want people to feel that off me. And there's nothing wrong with it. But when you find yourself doing it, sometimes you find yourself doing it for no reason. It's kind of like odd. And that's a trauma response, right? You flatter people even when you don't like them. You flatter people even when you don't like them. You want to appear perfect. That's a trauma response. You go out of your way to avoid conflict. You feel miserable when you've upset someone or disappointed someone, right? And sometimes you have to remember that even in correcting or disappointing people, people are going to be disappointed, but there's nothing wrong with correction. It's in how you say it. So when you feel so upset about it, when you do so, I've been there. You hold back your own opinion to maintain harmony. For me, that was a big one because I did not want to have any conflict. But now I've worked towards saying what I have to say and also being mindful of how I'm saying it, but not being afraid to say it, you guys. You seek frequent reassurance. That is people pleasing, because you constantly want people to give you good feedback because you don't have that validation within yourself, you guys. You get overscheduled, you get overburdened. These are signs of people pleasing, right? So in short, you guys, you would rather other people's needs be met than your own needs. You don't want to disappoint other people, right? This happens a lot in the workplace. This happens a lot in families. This happens a lot in couples, to where you don't say a lot because you don't want to create a chaotic situation. You don't want to be argumentative. But what that creates, you guys, is resentment built over time if you don't talk about your needs. You don't talk about what you need. You don't talk about your wants. You don't talk about what could help this relationship grow. You just let things slide, and then eventually things just manifest and it turns chaotic, you guys. So you do not, try your best to not put your own needs on the back burner. Please make sure that you are putting yourself first sometimes. There's nothing wrong with putting yourself first at times, you guys. Okay, so how do we break free from people pleasing? Set boundaries. Set boundaries, set boundaries. Know what you're willing to communicate and communicate it, okay? Limit yourself, you guys. Set boundaries. Tell them, like, hey, I have 20 minutes with you. Then I have to move on to another thing. And don't overextend your time. Prioritize your needs, you guys. Prioritize your needs. Because if you are pouring from an empty cup and you're constantly giving and pouring, what can you give other people? Prioritize your needs. Don't be afraid to say no. I've learned that I'm not afraid to say no, and sometimes I got to the point to where I don't even have to tell you why I'm saying no. That feels good. Just know, right? Don't be afraid to say no, and don't be afraid to be true to yourself. You guys, take baby steps also. Start to desensitize yourself and start small. The small things like, hey, I can't go today. We'll look into next week. Or, no, my schedule is full. Start small. You guys, start small with prioritizing your needs and your wants, okay? You can do it, all right? Practice self-compassion. Sometimes when we're people pleasers, we have so much compassion for everyone else, but we lack the compassion for ourselves, you guys. And we put ourselves last. Stop doing that, you guys. Don't be afraid to put yourself first. You can put yourself first and not neglect others. That can happen. Those two things can coexist, you guys, right? Delegate. If someone else can do something, ask them to do it. Don't overextend yourself. Also, you guys, in trauma, right? As being a mental health therapist, Christian mental health therapist for over 10 years, you guys, experiencing trauma myself and helping other people that has experienced trauma, I find that sometimes we like to delegate everything because we feel like if we have control, nothing can go awry. No, there's something that things won't be harmful to us and other people, but we have to start trusting ourselves and other people to delegate. Just because we're not in control, right? We have to allow God to be in control. Just because we're not in control doesn't mean that things aren't going to not going to end up well, you guys. Don't be afraid to delegate. That's something that I had to give up. Being in control, allowing other people to manage and work, right? Wait to respond. You can wait to reply to a request, right? I always have to feel like I had to respond right away. I didn't want the other person to feel like they were being neglected, so I always felt like I had to respond right away. But in the wait, you guys, don't be afraid to wait to respond, because in the wait, you can process your thoughts. You can think about what your needs are, and you don't just go and boom, respond to someone and tell them, yes, I can do this, right? Because as people pleasers, our first response is to please the other person. Give yourself time to think, okay? And always provide an alternative. If I can't do this, hey, maybe we could do this next week when I have less things on my plate, right? Provide an alternative. And you guys, the last thing I want to highlight about not being afraid to be a people pleaser is, even in the Bible, God is such a genius, because even in the Bible, it talks about kindness. It does not talk about niceness. Niceness, right, is when you're being nice, it means that you're being agreeable. You're people pleasing, right? But in the Bible, it purposely does not talk about being nice. It talks about being kind, right? And in Galatians 5:22, verse 22 to 24, it says, kindness is a fruit of the Spirit, along with love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, faithfulness, gratefulness, and self-control. Kindness. It doesn't say be agreeable, because God does not want us to agree to people that aren't harming us. God does not want us to be agreeable to people that are of God, but he wants us to be kind to people. And sometimes in being kindness, we have to exhibit self-control, which is fruit of the Spirit, to say no to certain things that will harm us in the long run, you guys. Also, Proverbs 21 says, people who pursue righteousness and kindness will find life, righteousness, and honor. So being kind, you guys, is always more authentic than being nice. Being nice means that you're just doing it because you feel like you have to. But being kind, you're showing your true self. You're showing your authenticity. You're showing who you are in Christ, you guys. So I encourage you guys to no longer people please. Be kind to people, but don't people please, and don't be agreeable, and don't be afraid to say no. Prioritize your needs and your want, and put yourself first. Have a blessed day.